Hi, everybody. Welcome to Queers and Soaps. I'm Tommy, and today I'm joined by Eric and Dayna.
Crystal.
Hey.
I am not wearing my crystal getup. Not my crystal. My
Yeah,
Alexis getup because it was too itchy
I
when I
can say.
did
She's wearing Steven. The Steven team.
Steven character.
Today we're
Elena.
discussing Dynasty Season 2, Episodes 9 through 12. So I'll roll the credits and we'll get right into it. Okay, so last we left off, Alexis was trying to lure Blake to Rome to get him alone with her. With the promise that Rashid Ahmed was going to release the oil tankers.
I know. I have a hard time understanding this stuff.
I know, I kind of blank when they talk business. It's like, blah, 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 and I just don't pay attention.
I know. I'm like, what is happening? And then she
They start
sends
talking about contracts. I'm just like on my phone.
right, and she sends Rashid away. Does Rashid have to go, or she just sends him away just so she can have Blake for a day or two or something?
Correct.
He sends him away so that she could have Blake for the night.
So weird.
So the way I understood it, Rashid is a part of some nondescript Arab country that they do not say, and they actually don't say because she's like, oh, he went to his home country. She doesn't say I don't know, country he could be from, and he's supposed to talk to His Majesty because apparently they're holding the oil because the oil came from their country. So Blake drilled it. So they're just holding it in the sea, with other military.
They kept saying His Excellency, and so I'm a little bit triggered by this verbiage because I'm watching Bold and Beautiful 1994, and one of the characters is dead, and she's in Morocco, and she's being held by a prince captive, and they call him His Excellency. So I'm like, are they in Morocco? I'm trying to connect.
Maybe it's got to be something in Morocco's not really in the Mediterranean, but somewhere in the Mediterranean because if they're in Rome, they can't be too far
right
where he.
Because I think when Blake gets there and Rashid isn't, I think she says they're taking a car to Rome. So who knows where they are? They're not in America.
They're not.
They're across the ocean.
No one ever knows where he's from.
It was these episodes that I really started to be like, wow, Alexis has the best wardrobe. Her wardrobe is so colorful, and her hats and everything, her bathing suits.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna jump. Oh, wig count.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know. I think I made a point. I'm wig at one point or not wig or something. I forget what. It's along the way somewhere.
When there's bangs, that's the wig because it's covering the hairline.
Okay, so I think in her first season, she does a lot of regular hair, her hair in the front, and then a piece in the back. Give her more volume because if you ever see her where she's not wearing any hair pieces at all, she does not have enough hair to quantify the volume that she gets a lot of the time. So I wrote down for episode 9, she had at least maybe 3 wigs, but I would say it's mostly hair pieces in the back.
Okay. Yeah, she told me she was gonna do a wig count, and she had a whole roster.
Wig count.
So something I noticed, Sammy Joe took a turn in these episodes, and I feel like it was very abrupt. All of a sudden, she's a little bit conniving and money hungry, and I try to rationalize it as she's been staying with them for a while now, and now she's become accustomed to this lifestyle, and she doesn't want to give it up, and more.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it was just so abrupt because she wasn't like that the last time we saw her. She was still kind of innocent. I miss my dad, Aunt Crystal, naive, and now she's all of a sudden I got to marry a rich guy. I have to be a part of this family.
Yeah. And she's even an asshole to Crystal at one point too, which is annoying. Everybody shits on Crystal.
Crystal's not doing well in these episodes.
No, she just lost her baby.
No.
Leave her alone.
Right?
Yeah, the way Blake calls Crystal as he's on his way to Rome and is basically like pushing her to see Nick to talk to him. And she's like, you think he's just gonna like say like a miracle word or like give me a miracle medicine and I'm just gonna be better? She's like, I lost a baby.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think I
like
wrote down
it's crazy.
he just wants her to be better. He just wants her to be like back to normal. And it's like, that's not how mental health works.
Yeah.
Or
I know.
about it. She's probably going through some like level of hormone dip
Yeah.
after losing that is just like insane.
Yeah. And it's almost like he's like, okay, I understand it's sad, but now get over it. Because he doesn't have the patience to deal with it. Like, you're a dick.
Right.
Fuck you.
Yeah, I mean, it starts out like nice. He's like, I'm in Paris, I'm sorry, and then it turns in. He's like, did you see Dr. Toscani? He's just like, that's why I called. And
Mm-hmm.
there you go.
I feel like he's indirectly pushing her into his arms, like indirectly. Like, go see Nick Toscani. Go see him. Go see. And Crystal's like, I don't want to go. Stop sending me there.
Yeah, and this whole Toscani and Crystal thing, like, I feel like it came out of nowhere. It's just like, I don't know. Like, I know Nick was like instantly attracted, but like, where did her feelings come from?
Also, Nick has ulterior motives. He wants to get back at Blake for whatever happened that caused his brother to kill himself. So
right, but I really think he likes Crystal. Like, because remember, like he was leaving the one time, like, and he, unless you think like when he left, he was like, oh, maybe I can seduce Crystal. Like, do you think he felt like that?
Maybe.
Or do you think he like? I thought he really felt for Crystal because he like, I don't know, I can't tell.
I think we always do. I feel like for some reason men just come on this show and like if it's not Blake or someone that's already established, I was like, oh, here's the new man that instantly from the first sight of Crystal, he just sees her walk back. I'm in love with this woman. This woman is my wife. And then
I would do anything for this woman.
And literally does whatever they can to get her to be with them.
Yeah.
So I think I've well established that I crush on Jeff, and as of now, I still like Jeff. I don't know if that's going to take a turn, and you guys don't have the same feelings. So I tried to read this through a different lens of like why you hate Jeff.
He's
like
given take
on his side for a lot of the arguments.
I'm not, because Fallon has told him 100 times that she does not love him, and he does not go away.
She tells him that, and then she's like, I was just mad, I didn't mean it. I was just trying to piss you off. Like, she like retracts. So it's like he's confused, and I'm like, I get why he's like frustrated.
Yeah, but if he would have left the first time, it would have been fine. Like, okay, you don't love me.
But she said it, and she was like, I lied. Like, I didn't mean it. Like, I just said it because, like, you're pissing me off. So he doesn't know what's real. And, like, in these episodes, I don't remember which one, but he was like, were you telling the truth when you said my uncle made a deal with you to bail your father out, and that's why you married me? And she's like, I don't know, ask your uncle. And he's like, I conveniently can't find him or get in touch with him.
Yeah.
Like, these episodes, I'm a little two minds of it because I see why Jeff is so angry, because it is pretty messed up to find out like that your wife essentially was never into you and married you because your uncle quite literally paid for her dad. That is a crazy pill to swallow. So like, I can understand that. But the problem with Jeff is that he's kind of a drunk. And he shows up drunk like all the time. The minute everything goes south, he's drunk in almost every single scene, showing up, blowing everything up for Fallon. And then on top of that, he loves to like toss her around, that I like hate to see her watch. Like, he grabs her and just like shakes her. And like, she's right. He never really knew her. He thought she was this person, like this fantasy.
Yeah.
And that she never lived up to that fantasy.
But she never acted like that fantasy. Like, she never hid how she is.
Never.
So he's being like shocked that she is who she is, And that's the problem, is that like he never should have married her because she was never who he wanted her to be from the jump. He married her because he thought he could change her, and then was rudely realized by her
And
specifically.
in dissecting these episodes, I feel like Jeff, like he looks such a crybaby. Like he's like harping on what happened in season 1, and everybody's like, "Dude, we're past this." Like, but he is. He's like, didn't he
because
go
he
to his
never got a
uncle?
clear answer of why they're married.
Like, get a clue. Like, he just doesn't get a clue. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like she told him.
Uh-huh.
He did get a clear answer. She told him, and then she did backtrack, but at the same time, like he
Yeah.
goes,
That's why
he
he's
finds
so
his uncle,
confused, because she keeps playing these head games. She's like, she says like the truth and then she backtracks.
and but no,
Well, in
but
the
then when he goes to his uncle's like, go to Blake. He goes to Blake. He finds out the truth, and he's still playing her like, dude, just get a clue and leave. Like, what the fuck?
I don't know. I'm still kind of pro Jeff, because
I used to be when I originally watched this. I did like Jeff, but watching him now, I'm like, this dude. He's just harping on this crap for like 15 episodes. Like, dude, get over it.
I remember not liking him with Kirby, but we'll get to that in like season 4, I think.
I think I like him better with Kirby, to be honest with you,
Really?
because Fallon doesn't like him.
Yeah, well, Fallon. Well, isn't
Yeah.
there a point where Fallon kind of likes him? Like she kind of like when makes a turn before the recast happens.
Later, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what the turn is. I don't know if it's like once the baby comes or whatever, but
No, she kind of has like a brain injury.
She had to have a brain injury to fall in love with him.
Aww.
She's not the same. Her and Jeff finally like come together. She's not the same person. She's not this person. This
Yeah.
Fallon is a different Fallon. Like,
Yeah.
this Fallon is desperate. We just talk about her desperateness with Nick Toscani. It is gross.
He is so rude.
I know.
Like he doesn't mind sleeping with her, but then he's like, "Get out!" Like, and he's always like, "Why are you here?" And she's just like, "I love you." And he's like, "That's not what this is."
Right. He wanted to.
And
He
she's
wanted
like,
to.
"Okay, love you. Call you in 5 minutes." And he's like, "Don't come back."
I feel like Fallon was a bonus for him. Like he could like use it to like get Blake eventually, but it won't really hurt Blake. So he's just like holding on to it. But he only wanted to just like bang her once. But like, and now he's just like, dude, I'm over it. Like, get out. Like, or remember the one point he's like, you can stay at my place, but don't be there when I get home.
And she seems to think that if she gets rid of this other woman before she finds out it's Crystal, officially that is Crystal, because she's always suspected.
Yeah.
That she seems to think that if she gets her out of the way, she has a shot. He doesn't want you. You were just someone to fuck. Excuse my language.
I think that like Fallon is like Jeff to Nick, where Jeff is like, you know, like,
and she's like, it's fine. I'm gonna have that's a little jumping ahead. She has an appointment to have an abortion.
Right.
Yeah.
And Jeff finds out about it. I think he found out about the last time we watched, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
He's like pissed about it, that she wasn't going to tell him that he was going to have a baby. And like, yes, I am all for it's the woman's choice, it's her body. But I do think that the father, especially if you're married, deserves to know. He doesn't get a say, but he deserves to know. So I am on Jeff's side with that.
Of course.
I am not on, I don't agree with him forcing her to not have it. And that he's just gonna, when he was drunk and he's like, I'm gonna sit here and watch you sleep so you can't go to this appointment. I'm like, but you're drunk, you're gonna pass out at some point, and Fallon's gonna Fallon, and she's gonna sneak out while you're asleep.
I literally said, like, you know, your ass is falling asleep the minute you sit down. You know, his ass just went, I'm gonna watch you.
And she's out.
Immediately. I love how she does like the classic like rich lady thing where she just goes to the hospital and demands like her appointment. Yeah, like that. Wait, that poor receptionist was like,
I like that the receptionist like stood her around and was like, no, 1 o'clock or you have to go somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, that was funny. Like, what do you think? They're just gonna take your baby out when you go at 10 in the morning? Like, what? Like there's a doctor on hand. Oh yeah, he can do it. All right.
And for a split second, I couldn't remember if she actually went through with it. Because like I'm like, did she? And does she have another?
I couldn't either. I didn't remember either.
The way that because Blake ends up going to try and stop her, and when she comes out, also HIPAA laws totally violated because he's like, is my daughter here, Fallon Carrington, and they're like, oh, we have a Fallon Colby. Like, no, you don't get to say that, especially not at a clinic in 1981. Like, no.
Well, yeah, there was no HIPAA back then, though. Remember, so they could give things out.
There was no HIPAA back then?
Not till 2000. I want to say 2005, 2006.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know it was that young.
And Farrah Fawcett helps get that in play because people were like stalking her.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. Yep.
So we see the doctor come out with Fallon and she's crying, and that's when I was like, wait, did she go through with it? Like, I wasn't sure. And because she's so upset, he thinks that she went through with it, and he's like hugging her and consoling her, and she says, I couldn't do it. You're gonna be your grandfather. And I was like, and of course he's relieved.
This whole thing, like typical, like, of course, there's no way on network television where they're ever in any world ever going to allow Fallon to have an abortion.
Like, that's exactly what I had. I was like, literally, ABC was not going to let that happen.
I don't know. They killed a baby when Alexa shot the gun, so I mean.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
Miscarriages are one thing. Purposeful abortions are a totally different thing. You know?
Right.
Yeah. White girl.
The scene where she's kind of like, I guess, on a sedative at home, and Blake is like telling her, well, she says, do you love me, or do you really love me? And he's like, of course. I like wanted him to like kiss her on the head when he left, and he just kind of like patted her.
I'm sorry, but
I'm like, can you show emotion, please? Like, it's your daughter.
Yeah.
Not only that, but can we discuss about how they made Fallon look like a child in this scene? They dressed her up in like this white little like nightgown. They put a little yarn bow in a yarn bow.
Oh yeah, I noticed the bow. Because I was like, why is that on her right now?
Just in what looks like this gigantic bed with tons and tons, like huge pillow. She looks like they made her look like almost like a little girl, like just a little girl in the bed, and her dad was just praising her. Thank you so much, baby, for an abortion. I'm so happy that you didn't get an abortion. You're a good girl. And I'm like, oh my god. They lay it on thicker.
And then the next day, he like has like a bunch of like oversized teddy bears and like balloons delivered to her bedroom.
Like, who does that? Who gets their daughter 3? Like,
she's like 2 weeks pregnant. Like, the baby has no use for these for months.
I like to think that Blake was maybe like on Fallon's side, like maybe like he was thinking like Fallon may regret it. I almost wonder what like conversation they would have had if she like didn't have it yet. Like, I'm curious to know. Like, I don't know if it was just about the grandchild, or if like, it might have been like, you might regret this decision. Like, you really got to think about it. Like, not positive. But.
This might be a little bit out of order. I'm sorry, Dayna.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say this might be a little bit out of order, but because it may have happened after. Let's just talk about Steven and Sammy Joe, and then I'll talk about this. So Steven and Sammy Joe's like, souping up his engine because she wants him to have a rematch with the guy that he raced a couple episodes ago. And I wasn't really interested in this, but they have the race.
Me neither.
But he's so like adrenaline rushed, and he's just like, I love you, and I'm just like, do you? And he's like, I want to take you back to your cabin. And I get so mad when he does that. I'm like, that is Claudia's cabin.
This is the second time. Literally, he's doing this. Like, he literally did the first time the same way. Ran a race, like, got excited, took her to a cabin, and then decided not to have sex with her. And now this time, totally.
And then
Not
I
a problem.
blinked. I literally feel like I blinked, and the next scene of them was them getting married. I'm like, what? I'm like, what?
So wild to think about Sammy Joe being like obsessed with cars, and like the whole like race car driver storyline feels
Mhm.
like something that they were like, "Ooh, let's give this a go," and then it just nobody cared, and then they
Yeah.
immediately.
Right.
Oh yeah, sure.
I feel like this was also like all of this happened because there were scenes with Sammy Joe and Crystal where Crystal was like talking about her getting a secretarial job, and Sammy Joe was kind of like bitchy. Talking to
Yeah.
herself, she was like, "Get a secretary job, marry a rich guy." She's like, "Sorry, Aunt Crystal, that's not how I'm gonna do that," or whatever. And that's when I was like, "Ooh, you turned real quick."
Yeah, I didn't like that. Like she liked how Crystal got Blake. Like she's just like, oh, you bagged Blake. Like whatever. Like I guess she doesn't really know her aunt is like a decent person. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, she
Well, I
also
think
hasn't seen her since she was like a kid. So
yeah.
Right.
She doesn't actually know anything about anybody here. She just made like a huge assumption leaps about absolutely everybody in the house. Like about Fallon, about Steven. She assumes Steven has a ton of money because he's the son. She assumes Crystal does that with Blake because of his money. She thinks Fallon's a snob. I mean, some of these things are true. Don't get me wrong, but like not everything is the same. So it's kind of like I think she's just making these hops, and I always think it's because Stephen rejected her in the beginning, and then now she's just kind of like, I'm going to do whatever I can to be a part of this family so I get more money or live
mhm.
Yeah.
the last day or whatever, you know?
So now circling back to what I originally was gonna start talking about, Fallon is kind of bitchy to her, and
Hmm.
it implies that she doesn't like her. So
Yeah.
then Sammy Joe overhears a conversation between Alexis and Steven where he like
Hmm.
says, what's going on with the situation that Fallon is not Blake's daughter or whatever. So
Yeah.
now
Mhm.
Sammy Joe has this little bit of information that she might be able to use to her advantage at
Yeah.
a later date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was laughing because what did Alexis say? Like what she said something like you married that basically like that less than girl, like that nothing girl.
Yep.
Yeah.
Alexis from the beginning too. When she first met her, she was just like, "Oh, get away from my
I feel
son."
like I feel like Alexis doesn't
No,
like any woman.
Right.
no, it can't be
Except
anyone unless he purposely chooses it for Steven.
right,
Like,
right. Because even
Uh,
Fallon she has her issues with, which they kind of clear up a little bit in these episodes.
there was a
mhm,
scene probably in the first episode where Fallon was at Nick's house because she keeps going to Nick's house and keeps telling her to leave. Um,
Get out.
where Crystal broke down and did call Nick, and Fallon answered the phone, and she like changed her voice a little bit to act like a receptionist.
hi, hello, Nick Scotty's house. Hello.
Stay out of there, girl.
So this is where she
Oh,
kind of
what?
starts to like piece together that maybe Crystal's the other woman, even though this was Blake's doing. It wasn't Crystal pursuing him.
Right. Like, wait, well, also, okay. All right. I have a couple questions that maybe we can address. About like how Nick Descani like actually treats his patients and like where and what's appropriate for a doctor to be taking a patient to his home to
Right,
just have dinner. Like
right.
that's one thing. And another thing is like
I laughed when she
how
was like, "My
why
sister used to make it the same," and he's like, "In Ohio, Dayna, Ohio."
right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh god.
He's like,
Like
"Meanwhile, I
he's
made this big Italian
again,
dinner, and your Dayton, Ohio sister made this."
your spaghetti's actually trash. Also, like, who just gives out their home number to anyone,
Hmm.
or their patients to call to make appointments? Like, the way Crystal and Nick, like, work like, initial relationship, like, to as the premise, I guess, to get them together feels so unethical from a doctor-patient standpoint that, like, this dude is just like, I don't know how Crystal doesn't see, obviously, that he's going after her, like, romantically from the start. Like, there's no attempt or like he throws in like psychological jargon to kind of like mess with her head while she's going through stuff when she finds out, you know, through the newspapers, like other things when she calls the house and stuff and she's like running back and forth like through everything. It's
Yeah.
absolutely insane. So like when Fallon's there and picks up the phone, why is Crystal calling his house? And why
Right.
is Fallon picking up
It's not
someone
like
else's
she called
phone?
his cell phone. Like he has his
Right.
phone directed to his cell phone, and like she picked it up. It's his house.
Why isn't Crystal calling the office to make an appointment? Why is she
But she
calling
ends
the
up at the
home?
office. So before we get to the
Yeah.
office stuff, let's talk about Rome.
Oh yeah.
So
While in Rome,
Blake and Alexis are at Rashid's villa.
Mhm.
And the minute I saw this and I saw Alexis in her bathing suit, I remembered this episode. Like for some reason,
Yeah.
the noise popped out to me. A lot of things happened in these episodes that I was like, huh, it happened that soon?
Yeah.
Actually, this
Yeah.
season, like with the horse and later on the blindness, I'm like, this all happened in one season? I thought the blindness happened in season 3.
speaking of the bathing suit, so was that a wig? At the
Yes, right?
Okay. So this is an instance where because she's wearing that like band thing, I think she had her real hair from like here
Okay.
pushed back over top of a piece that was probably clipped like somewhere in this area, maybe in the front.
Okay.
And it was just like a partial that gives her all this volume in the back, but it makes it look because lace fronts weren't really a thing in that time frame where like you can make a realistic hairline. So the best way we're doing a lot of close-ups because I noticed that there's more close-ups on her in a lot of these scenes than I remember most of the time. And hair is you could tell like there's like the smaller wispier bits in the front and then they're like pushed all the way back just to kind of style. I mean, it could be her hair too. I could be giving her Joan Cause like not a lot of good credit here because she could have amazing, wonderful black hair. It's just that I don't think so because like when she has her hats, and there's a couple other times when she had like these very tight ponytails. The bun is like the tiniest, littlest bun on the back of her head.
I know.
Where'd the hair go? Where'd it go?
Yeah, I always assume
know.
when she's very casual and she just has her hair pulled back that's obviously her real hair and everything else is
Oh
a wig.
yeah, absolutely. That would be the point, right? Like when she, especially when she's exactly. There's some like scenes. There was this one scene where she had like this little pompadour thing on the top of her head. It was like almost perm hair. It looked like a big like bulbous thing. I thought maybe that was her hair. Like I just think her hair's like way curlier and not as dark naturally as the wigs she wears. I think her wigs are like almost black, and her hair's like a little more brunette than that.
I also feel like when she wears outfits that require her to wear like the big floppy hats, that she that they were just like, we're not going to do your hair and we're not putting a wig on you. Just put this hat on.
Yeah.
Like the whole scene where she like, so if we're talking about the bathing suit and all that stuff and the paparazzi, right?
Yeah.
The scene where, so spoiler alert, she pays the paparazzi to be there. Shocker.
Wasn't shocked at all.
Okay.
I was like, she probably paid this guy. Like this, I was like, this is such a set, especially the way she
We
was
all thought
posing.
that, right?
Yeah.
The way she was like making sure that she was facing him, and then he like had his hands on her. Like it was, I was just like.
And you could do your own front. You could do your own shoulders. Like you could just be like would have been like, no, just your back, girl.
That at her like, oh Alexis, I need you now.
Oh my god, I can't. So like
Ridiculous.
the scene, there wasn't really needed this. We all thought that like from the jump. So like there was the scene where she's like looking at them and laughing. That is probably the craziest wig I saw on her to date. It was not like good.
I knew that was a wig.
Sheen to it a little bit, and you're like, oh, that girl is a wig. You got on your wig.
So there was an establishing shot outside, like maybe it was outside the villa, but it was like it looked like a mansion or some huge building, where it was like Rashid and like people that work for him and Alexis and Blake, and literally, so it was an establishing shot. Greg walks in and he's like, "Oh, I remember this." I was like, "They haven't said words. What do you mean you remember this?" He's like, "I remember this episode." And I was like, "You know what? I get it." Because the minute I saw the bathing suit, I was like, "I remember this episode." So I was like, maybe this is just a very memorable episode for people.
He remembers that shot.
He's like, "They're like
For sure.
away, right?" I was like, "They're in Rome." He's like, "Oh." Because he was like, "They're not in like the Middle East." And I'm like, "No, it's very confusing."
He's got a good memory, that dude.
See, that's the thing. The Mediterranean is not too far away. It's in the same-ish region. It could be right. It leads right into like, right there. So it's possible.
It's funny when Alexis is on and Greg like walks in or he's sitting there, he'll stop whatever he's doing just to like. It's almost like she draws him in.
She is a villain icon. She's not really a villain. She's just like a girl.
She's a gay icon.
Boss. Like absolute icon. Like there are generations of drag queens that do everything they can to make themselves look like her in every way.
So immediately those pictures are printed like the next day. So Crystal goes to her appointment at Nick's office and he's running a little behind. So she sits and she goes to look at the paper, one of the tabloids, and of course it's right there. So she gets upset, throws the paper down, runs out. And this is when Nick goes running after her and is like, "Let me cook for you." And he brings her back to his house and cooks her dinner.
Spaghetti. Like grandma made.
But then she finds the paper in his coat or like it fell out of wherever he grabbed it. And she's like, "Is this why this is happening? Because you feel bad for me?"
I like how everybody gets this rag paper too. It's like everywhere you see, everywhere you go. Like the National Enquirer.
But so I think it's the scene because she's at his house. I think this is the scene where he kisses her for the first time.
Yep.
So and that's how that
episode. So weird.
Well, it coincides with also Alexis and Blake kissing.
Oh, right.
Because they get
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So they get the deal. The deal works out for Rashid because Rashid and Blake have a little back and forth. I'm sure this is when you guys went on your phone and were like, "I don't need to know any of this." But
just tell me the end result. I don't need to know all the details.
I just is Alexis back on screen, please? Because I prefer that. Thank you. There's the whole scene is kind of like a classic moment of Blake being Blake. He's the best businessman there ever was. He outsmarted Rashid and His Excellency. He'll get his oil. Like half the wonderful. So Alexis and then Blake also like celebrate, like they're hanging out, standing and staring in each other's eyes, talking about how awesome they are.
As she's dressed as a polar bear.
He does tell her that she looks absolutely gorgeous, and she's like, "You want to get a closer look?" And I was like,
"You ever looked?" Yes,
in her white furry nightgown.
So like she's staring at him, giving him all the come-hithers, and then they kiss.
She says, "You want a closer look?" And he's like, "As tempting that is, and I was like, "Good, you be faithful."
Right. Yeah. Well, they kind of leave it a little open-ended at the end of their scene. They kind of make it seem like because she's like really laying it on thick. Like, Blake, I would like to hang out with you in the villa together, you and me. And then he's like, and then cut scene. And then we see basically Crystal being taken in by Nick Descani after his horrific. So it's kind of like he's trying to convince her with psychological jargon as to why she should not be with him, although he has his own biases, and not just because he wants to be with her, but he also hates Blake. So like he's literally doing what he can to make sure, and then they kiss, and it's kind of really sad because it really looks like he's taking advantage of Crystal during probably like one of her most emotional moments. But Crystal is not a baby child person. She knows what she's doing, so I want to get that out there. That I kind of feel like.
Well, the following episode kind of picks up with that scene, and they kiss more than once. And she's just like, she's like, I gotta go. She's like, before I do something I regret, and she leaves.
I have to point out when Jeff came home to Fallon in that one episode, the first one, that she was watching General Hospital.
Yes, I wanted to point out this scene. I'm like, that's Douglas Sheehan, and I'm like, what year is this? I'm like, he was on General Hospital. So then I texted him, like, yes. He's like, I remember that scene. He's like, he's like, also Robert Jackson, and I'm like, oh, there was a blonde. So yes, I was like,
he's Joe Kelly and Heather were talking because you could hear Heather's voice, like, and I was like, oh, that's so funny. And it's also funny too because like I think Tori Spelling was a big General Hospital fan, which she's the one that got Emma Sam's cast after Pamela Sue Martin left.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm guessing maybe that's why like Aaron threw a General Hospital clip in there. Like, my daughter loves your show.
I never heard that. I've only ever heard the Shannon Doherty story where she saw her in like Little House and Heather's, and she like said that she would be good as Brenda on 90210.
I did not hear that.
You never heard that?
We both learned something new.
No, I feel like that's like a well-known story she tells all the time. She won't shut up about it.
That's the way I feel about the other one with the Emma Sam's one. I always heard that. It's funny. Oh yeah, and I like that episode 10 is called Sammy, Joe, and Steven Get Married, and they're in it for like 3 minutes. I mean,
in season 1, it was like Fallon's wedding, and it's just them walking in the middle of the night, being like, "Wait, hello."
Yeah, yeah, that's so weird.
Oh my God,
I thought it would have been like a big deal. Yeah. Everything else is going on. There's the whole Alexis stuff, the Crystal stuff, and they like get married.
I would have called it when in Rome. Like,
yeah, it would have made more sense.
Yeah,
whatever. And what an original title too. Like, I mean, I wonder what's going to happen in this one.
Right.
I guess they get married. Yeah.
I wish they didn't get married because then we would, then it would be like a thing.
Back then, a lot of shows would show the episode title and like the guest star credits, but Dynasty never did that, did they?
No.
So it wouldn't be spoilery, but I feel like you would see it in TV Guide or something.
Yeah, I don't think they even named them in TV Guide. They probably just named them because they had to name them or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And now I don't even think they bother with shows anymore. I don't think they name them anymore. A lot of shows.
Right. Well, we mentioned about a lot of this stuff already.
Yeah.
In the first episode, so we kind of merged this. Because this is when Fallon escaped Jeff and all that stuff.
Merge everything.
Yeah.
Like one long storyline. Like
one long storyline.
Yeah.
Oh, Alexis goes to the psychic in this one. That was funny.
Right. So,
oh my God.
Knowing future things, I felt like I was like, were they foreshadowing stuff about her getting married and him and the groom dying with this?
They totally did. They totally did.
I was like, wow.
But it was like you didn't know who though. That was the thing. Like you'd be like, oh, what's going on?
Cool. Knowing and you know, and now you see it, you're like, oh, okay, I see what you did.
And she know that Crystal was hurt because of her. That was fun.
Oh,
like, I don't like that ball. Can we do the cards? Stick to the cards. Yeah, all right. I'm paying you. Shut up.
That she was very overdramatic, that actress.
She was, but that's like, I loved it. I loved that overdramatic. Yeah. It needed it.
Me too. It did. It did. It was too chill otherwise.
And Alexis is overdramatic, so I mean, it worked out well.
So this one business deal that I kind of paid attention to was, I guess, Blake is on his high horse now that he got his oil tankers back. So now he's just like, I'm just gonna grandstand with everybody, and he's like, doesn't want to sell his football team. He wants to own it completely. Forgot the detail of the name of the person. Rattinger, maybe.
Reinhold. It's
Reinhold.
It begins with an L, like it's LR, but his last name's Ryan. And he has his like punk henchman, which I forget his name, but he's a weird looking dude. He's got some pretty eyes though. Nice blue eyes, that guy.
He says that they want 100%, and Blake's basically like 45% or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look
Well,
at me
Blake was in
paying
a
attention
bind.
to details.
Yes. So Blake was in a bind, and he was using that partial sell of his team, like a partial stake in his team, to get some cash, right? To go do
Okay.
the things. Make Denver Carrington solvent. And now that Blake, we were saying that Blake's got, he's flush, he's fine, he's great. He wants his whole thing back, and Mr. Reinhold, for some reason, wants the team in general. Because, like, the original deal, he was like, oh, I'll buy your whole team 100% for, I think it was like $10 million or something like that. And Blake's like, nah, bro, nah, it's not what it's worth. And then, so they keep going back and forth about it. And they're being messy. And then
Yeah.
Blake's like, I got a counter offer for you. Well, let me buy back your share. You make a profit. We're golden. And he's like, nope.
Why is it worth trying to kill Blake though? That's what I was confused about. I'm like, he must really want this team. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
That was weird.
it seems very weird. It seems overly dramatic of a reaction
Right.
for
Right.
Blake.
Like if Blake doesn't give us his team, like there's other teams.
Yeah. I'm wondering
Well,
if
he
it's
kind of implies something bad's gonna happen by saying like he doesn't like to be challenged, or like he doesn't take no for an answer.
Right. I was thinking it's more of a respect, like showing a message, like because what leads up to the whole bombing is really like the henchman goes to the coach of the team, tells the coach of the team to pull his quarterback because for whatever reason, I guess he owes money to somebody or whatever. And the coach is like, I'm going to call my boss and go find out. So he immediately calls Blake. Blake then takes it personally, shows up to this horrific locker room. Could anyone smell that locker room when they saw that scene? I felt like it was just not. I think it was supposed to be like exciting, maybe like sexy in some way, but it was not. It felt really weird because there's like this one shot of this guy like pumping iron. It's like, okay. But then
I pick things up, I put them down.
Yeah.
I love that.
Like, am I supposed to be turned on by this? I don't think so, but it's
maybe in 1981, 82.
Looks so dirty.
And like those big, like a lot of guys with this big, like what looked like man. Anyway, I'm getting distracted.
There was less options out there to see men like that, so it's like skin.
The vapors involved. So like, but then Blake basically sees him there, and he's like, "Nah, bro, you don't come here and threaten my coach or my players. Kick rocks." And that might be the reason why, because it's like, you don't disrespect my henchmen, so I gotta blow you
up. Andrew comes back in this one too, and then he doesn't like Blake want to send them to see how the tankers are in Middle East or something.
Yeah,
I try to pay attention to these stories because I don't know what's happening. What's that?
I didn't realize Andrew was like gone. He's in the opening credits, isn't he?
Well, he comes back after. Yeah, like Blake comes back from Rome, and then Anders meets him, and he's like, "Oh, I need to button this up. Like, go there."
Oh, his boyfriend. His boyfriend.
Yeah, exactly. So then he goes to Alexis, and I don't remember why. He's with Alexis for some reason. I can't remember what for. Like,
yeah, I don't know why either.
Oh, he needed help getting a hold of Rashid.
Oh yeah, there you go. Okay.
And nobody can get a hold of Rashid except Alexis. I guess she's a good piece of ass.
Well, she kind of screwed him over too in a way, because like she got him to meet her because she like had a favor, and that's how she got him to meet in the first place.
Right.
She kind of fucked him over. But anyway.
That's true.
So the bombing happens. Jeff kind of saved Blake. And when he was like, "You can't see," I'm like, "Oh, we're here. We're here already. You can't see."
Yeah.
He straight up tackled the ground. That poor old man. Just boof, and he's just like protecting him. And they were perfectly away. And they did not need to tackle Blake to the ground.
So the next episode, they're trying to like figure out what his issue is, get like the best doctor. He's like, that doctor saw me for 20 minutes and we got a $10,000 phone like medical bill or whatever.
Blake definitely like a little bitch in this episode.
Crystal's starting to feel guilty and like she can't leave him while he's blind.
We find out it's like weeks later too. It's like 3 weweeks later or something, or longer.
I never know the timeline on the show.
Yeah, it's been weeks. That's why. Remember, I think they say it like because Nick's been bugging her or whatever.
This is
it's been like a month
compared to like the 30-something episode season, so maybe there were actual breaks.
It's
like episode season.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Like Fallon, so there's like the scene during the bombing. It feels like in tandem. These two things are supposed to be happening at the same time. Fallon discovers that it's actually Crystal who's with Nick. She sees her walk into his house. They have like a little tete-a-tete. Crystal kind of decides she's going to divorce Blake. And then the next scene is Blake getting his ass blown up. So and then is weeks later. So of course, I think I wrote down, well, Crystal can't divorce Blake now. He's blind. How is he supposed to live? No way the Saint Angel Crystal would ever let go of him while he's blind. That's so wrong.
And does she really want to divorce him just for Nick? Like, I don't, or is it like multiple?
It just feels like Matthew all over again, and I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah, it's honestly just a situation where she's being manipulated by someone else. Crystal just kind of. That's why I kind of blame her, because it's like she feels like she's being willfully ignorant in these scenarios. Like there's no way that she's seen that like Nick was really designing on being with her romantically from the start. He like the tea part, like taking her to tea, doing all that stuff, like he giving her the eyes like every single day. Like she sees him. It's kind of wild. So I think she just instinctually ran to him because she was having problems with Blake because she needs comfort and someone to tell her she's, okay, when instead of just going like, talk to your husband. But Blake was not doing himself any favors. Like every time I tried to talk to him about the fact that there's these pictures from Rome, he never told her about Alexis being on vacation with him. He didn't say that on purpose because he knows like Crystal was going to be all pissy about it.
I was making fun of Joseph this whole episode because he was like, he coming in the middle of the night reading him stories. Like, of course I'll do that for you, boo. Love you.
I know. Love you. I'll bring a cot.
I could bring a cot in here. That way I could just be here if you need anything in the middle of the night. I was like, stand by your man.
Oh my God, I love Joseph coming in, just being totally exacerbated by Blake. Like, well, you don't need to ring more than once, Blake. I hear you. I heard you the first time.
Let me put your house shoes on.
He's like,
slippies.
And this,
I was confused when Crystal went to the phone booth. Remember, like, doesn't Alexis come over to the house?
Yeah. So Alexis comes over to the house, and she's actually in the room when Joseph offers to bring the cot, and this is when she's like, won't your wife, like, playing ignorant, won't your wife will she be on board for this menage a trois or whatever? Like, and he's like, Crystal's sleeping in her own room or whatever, and she's just like, playing ignorant.
Right. And then like, why did Crystal leave? Because remember, she left the house and she was like driving in the rain, and then she like,
because of it's the argument between Blake and her after she confronted him about seeing the pictures in the paper.
Oh, right. So she ran off.
Yeah.
Right. And he like goes basically, it was not a big deal. Nothing happened. You should believe me. That's it. End of discussion.
And of course, Alexis answers the phone.
Right. But then again, this is doing this purpose. She's setting this up on purpose. It just happened to be luck that she called, but Alexis is trying to be there on purpose all the time. So Crystal will see her.
And she knew, because when Crystal didn't say anything and she hung up, she had a look on her face like I thought that was her. She's like, oh, they weren't a heavy breather, or thank God they weren't a heavy breather.
But it was funny because the next episode, Crystal's home, and I'm like, so she just took a ride in the rain and came back? It was weird.
She went to Nick Dascani's house. Like that's
Did
that's
she?
what she did.
Yeah, isn't that what led to that first kiss? Like that she ran over there? Yeah.
No, she didn't go this time because it ended with that. She went to the phone booth, called Alexis. Alexis answered, and then in the next episode, she's home.
I thought she went to Nick Dascani's. That's why when he asked her, like his plate comes back and asks, like, "Oh, where'd you go? Where have you been? Like, would you just drive around a big circle and then come back
Yeah,
or whatever?"
yeah.
And I completely remember
Unless they alluded to it, but
girl.
I guess maybe she did go there, but like they didn't show that, so I was confused. I gotta see her there.
So Fallon goes out to lunch with Alexis, which I thought was weird because she doesn't like her mother. I'm like, oh, we're having lunches now. Are we working on a relationship? Like, what's happening? And she sees
They kind
Nick,
of are.
obviously. She has to go talk to him. She's like, hey, boo, love you. And he's like, what do you want? And Alexis was kind of like watching, smoking a cigarette at the table.
Classic 80s.
And Alexis knew.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, that's who she likes.
Nick was like, I'm meeting a patient, and she is like, you know, is it Crystal pretty much? And she's like, I'm gonna have a seat, and he's like, really? He's like, go away. I don't like you.
But why didn't Fallon say that it was Crystal when Alexis asked her who? She like hid it for some reason.
She doesn't in that scene, but when I think they're having a conversation in her studio later on, and she does, because she says, I saw her come at 3 in the morning one night, and I saw her at his house, and that's when she's like, maybe we could kill two birds with one stone. We can get Crystal away from Nick and Blake.
And Blake, yeah.
She's kind of like, yeah, let's do it. I was like, I kind of like these two working together. I was like, also Fallon, she gets it from her mama. Because
for sure. For sure.
But Alexis, like, I guess she's never actually spoken to Nick, because she says when Fallon sits down, she's like, there's something about his eyes. She's like, he's trouble. And she's like, he's a psychiatrist. He's not a gangster.
I love Alexis can clock something right off the bat. Like, Nick isn't good. He's not doing good things. He's wreaking absolute chaos and havoc from start. He's not even a good doctor. He's not even a good psychiatrist. Like, it's just.
I know. Originally, I thought like psychiatrists. Remember, I think I said it the last time. I thought like psychiatrists maybe were like that back then. But then in Dallas, you have Dr. Elby, who's like a really good psychiatrist, like listening and talking things out with Sue Ellen. So I'm like, okay, so maybe Nick's just a terrible psychiatrist.
Or he's just written that way.
But yeah. I
think there's a part of it is kind of like, yes, like what you're talking about, that was like the way they must have done things at certain points, like the way they behave. But he's also actively using his knowledge in psychology to manipulate people.
Right, that is true, yeah.
And the way he tries to get Fallon to go not have an abortion, you could see it. Like the minute he goes from just trying to get her out to trying to convince her, like his tone switches, his body language switches. It all happens, and it's like, this guy's just really using all.
So is that what you think? Like he's just like trying to just do everything to screw Blake over?
No, I think he's legitimately in love with Crystal, and this is like a convenience thing. Like he just, I think almost in a weird way, he almost like lets go of his revenge just in his pursuit of Crystal, because he wants to be with Crystal so bad. I don't know what it is about Crystal, but like the minute she comes on screen with this like random men throughout the whole series.
I mean, she is a beauty. She is a beauty.
She's pretty, but like I don't think she's as pretty as everybody says she is. Like,
I mean, she's got some crazy eyes that just like peer into your soul. Not gonna lie, like sometimes
she dresses well. Like, I mean, like, me as a gay man might turn my head and be like, "Oh, I like your outfit." Like, but like,
I love your shoulder pads.
They're very broad.
So I think
I should have made the T-shirts with shoulder pads. That would have been funny. I should have Karen do that.
So like just her, like Nick's just suffering from Crystal syndrome. You know, like he's just in love.
Crystal syndrome.
Going back to the lunch with Alexis, though, Alexis is basically like, so what is your end goal with this Nick Toscani? And she's like, I'll have the baby, I'll divorce Jeff, and then I'll marry him. I'm like, he doesn't want you. He's not going to marry you.
Nope.
And Alexis is pretty much like, well, until we get there. She's like, that's when she's like, have you found out any more information on this other woman? And I'm like, Alexis knows stuff. Like, so they've been talking, and I'm just like, okay, are you guys are working on your relationship, I guess. You're having lunch.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the
So
pregnancy.
what about Cecil and Claudia? I'm confused by that.
Yes, I wanted to talk about this. So Claudia's
Because
working.
Cecil says one thing, right? And then like he says it later, and I'm like, is he trying to like get her confused or something? I don't know.
No,
I was confused.
so this is what I took away from it. So
Okay.
wasn't she supposed to work for Carrington, and then like he met with her and he convinced her to come work for him? Is that
Well,
what
I thought they
No,
both worked at Carrington.
No, I
No?
think Claudia's working at Denver Carrington. Jeff
Oh.
is
Yeah.
also working in Carrington. That's why they
Right.
keep meeting all the time, because she's kind of like does fire all that stuff. Cecil saw Claudia at Denver Carrington while he was just there meeting Blake, just happened to bump into her in the lobby.
Yeah, because I remember Blake being mad. He's like, you called in your loan. He's like, are you really a friend or something? I don't know. I stopped paying attention.
Yeah, and super pretty, which she is, and he offered her lunch. Yeah, and then they decided that he was going to help her find her kid and Matthew,
Right.
Lindsay and Matthew. So that's their connection right now. There's no sexual thing that I know of so far.
And in this episode, she was working. She had her hands like full with like these binders and books. And I was like, oh, look at her. She's looking good. She's looking healthy. She's working. Good for her. Getting her mind right.
Yeah.
And he's like talking to her, and he must have told her that they got a tail in some country or state. I think it was a country. And then he said a different state, and she's like, but you said this. And he's like, this is where he, I guess, was like trying to make her sound like she was crazy, like she misheard it. He's like, no. He's like, you know, they all sound the same. He's like, don't worry. He's like, you concentrate on work, and I'll concentrate on getting your child back.
Yeah.
But Claudia's not buying it. She's smart. So, because she's even like, no. You could see it in her face. She's like, no, I heard what I heard. Like,
yeah, she's like, you said this. But like, what is he trying to do? Like,
yeah, I don't know. Doesn't make sense.
I don't know what is. Yeah, it doesn't.
With her.
Yeah. Where's it going? Got lost.
And Cecil.
So there was a random scene. I don't know what episode it placed in, but it was Sammy Joe and Steven in bed, and she tells him that she overheard the conversation with him and Alexis that Fallon is not Blake's daughter. She's like, is it true? She's like, how could something so awful like she means like this big thing like be true? She's like, I can't even say it.
Yeah,
I would never say such things that are so horrible to say.
Right. And he's like, I don't know. He's like, I really don't know if it's true or not. And he's like, so don't say anything. And she's like, I would never. She's like, Fallon doesn't like me yet. She's like, but she's still my sister-in-law. And she has that look on her face like, yeah, I'll say it if I need to. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I'll be holding on to this and thank you later when it's opportune for me. Thanks.
Yeah. I think she tries to blackmail Alexis at some point with that. I can't remember.
Oh, for sure.
And then she's like, okay, we should get ready for supper. And then she's like, I mean dinner. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, I was confused. Yeah, well, I thought supper was like more appropriate than dinner, but I don't really know the difference. It's supper at 4 and dinner's at 5. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that was pretty much it, right? Because the last scene is the conversation with Alexis and Fallon, where she says we'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone to get Crystal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, basically,
Oh, I did want to talk about a scene. So Blake is at work blind, and Crystal comes to see him, and she brings him coffee, and he thinks it's the secretary. And he starts to say, call Mrs. Carrington, and she's like, Blake, it's me. And fuck him. Because he was basically just like, I don't. He's like, I could have anybody bring me coffee or bring me anything I want in like a second. He's like, I don't need a wife for that. I need a wife in my bed. And I was so grossed out by that.
Yeah.
I
I feel like
know.
it's basically like I just need you to be in my bed to sleep with, like to have sex.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, Blake
I didn't like that.
it's very
I tried
classic
to,
of him.
but this
Good.
is what, like, again, I always like the storyline progression. Like I know like Blake looks absolutely awful in the season, but I feel like as time goes on, it gets a little better, and I'm like rooting for them later. And it's probably not to like season 5 or 6, but
Yeah.
Or not.
Well,
but it is, or 9, or the end,
Or the
or the
reunion.
series finale.
yeah,
What team?
I get it. I get it. You're saying there are moments where he does make more of a pause before he says some deflammatory things like that.
Right,
Like quite Crystal away. What's wild about this scene is that like Crystal, up until this point, has been basically pushing off Nick Descani, saying like, I can't leave him. I need to stay with him. He's mine. I need to take care of him. I can't be with you, Nick. Right?
Yeah.
Like making choice to say no. And then the first interaction that they have that's not been like weird and awkward, he tells her like this. And it's kind of like, oh dude, if you only knew like that she was trying to make her way back to you and you're just kind of like, nah, bitch, get away. But
Yeah.
at the same time, like he wants a wife of a certain level in his life, not like half in, half out.
Yeah.
Because if you're playing like the half in, half out game, he's not messing with that. And also, when you're blind and sad and upset, like everything's at the surface. You're just ready to like. So I give like a little bit of leeway. It still is pretty shitty to say.
It was the way he worded it, and then he was like, "Can you commit to that?" Pretty much, and then he was like, "Don't answer that." I was like,
Right. I
but
think he knows it was
with your whole heart being half in. I feel like she's always been half in because it was it was Matthew before Nick, and now it's Nick, and I'm just like, she's always ready to go. She's got one foot out the door.
and that's I mean, like Blake really doesn't have a lot of like this whole mess with Nick. Crystal went too far, which I think is kind of upset because it's like it's not like Blake is totally innocent. He kissed Alexis
right.
in Rome. That happened. So like to pretend like as if he's absolved of any wrongdoing is kind of messed up, but like it's very typical of men of his age and the time frame. Like why would that be a big deal? Whatever Crystal does is like 1,000 times worse, which is just a hard pill to swallow, watching.
You know, it would help if Crystal had her own friends like she did in the pilot that we never saw again.
Right?
Crystal has no friends. I feel bad. So these men that come along like manipulate
they
her.
could help her through these things.
Right? To like talk out that's not a biased opinion, that's not in the family.
Right.
I feel like a lot about Crystal too that's kind of hard to understand is how like black and white she is about her morality and like the problems she has with way Billy does business. Like the whole argument about Alexis being at this trip was in Blake's eyes a strictly business related issue, even though he did kiss her. So it's kind of like to Blake.
And he
it's
also
like
technically lied by omission by not saying that Alexis was there because he did have several phone conversations and never mentioned that Alexis was there.
Right, exactly. And like that's the problem that he fails to see that I think Crystal can't even articulate. Like she's upset because it has to do with Alexis. It makes it look like he's cheating and all that stuff. But the fact that the argument gets blasted out because Blake's like nothing happened. So there was no cheating. You think there was cheating, and then she has to somehow trust that when he doesn't tell her things very openly. I get it. I just think that Crystal just went over in the other opposite direction and then was also then manipulated too. Like she did with Matthew. She did that with Matthew. Matthew didn't really manipulate her that much, but Nick sure does. And
right, yeah.
Well, with Matthew, she was pretty much just like, if you would have told me you wanted to be with me, I would have left Blake.
Right.
She's like, yeah, I'm stuck in this marriage, and you want to be with me, and I want to be with you.
I struggle with Crystal of being like, yes, she's supposed to be like the good character, the one that makes all the moral decisions and stuff. But at the same time, this stuff happens, so it's like she's not. She's just a human. So This is like the parts of Crystal that are kind of like, ooh, girl.
Yeah.
She's very complicated.
She is, and now they all are.
Yeah. I did like when Alexis confronted Crystal about Sammy Joe and Steven.
Oh, right.
That was a fun one. But then, like,
Oh, was
Crystal kind of had the upper hand. She's like, "Well, my niece is of age, so whatever. I'm cool with it." And then she like is a dickhead, of course, because she's like, "Well, since you're happy, I gotta bring you down a couple pegs."
Blake wasn't happy about the marriage either.
No, nobody was.
Yeah.
No, nobody was.
Nobody was. Poor Steven wanted one congratulations from his family, and not one of them was excited. Not Crystal.
I mean,
no one.
Steven isn't making good choices, obviously.
No,
So
they all see what he can't see. They obviously could see that like Sammy Joe is like it's too quick. Like this whole thing is way too fast.
right, she's been there like a month.
Yeah.
So
maybe 2.
We're one episode past the midpoint of the season, so we're getting through it pretty quick. Well,
getting through.
Like, I wonder what was the breaking point for the actor that plays Steven to decide that he wanted to leave. Like, I wonder what was like, nah, I'm not going to play this anymore. Like, this is.
I think probably this stuff.
You think so?
Because I know he liked. I think he liked the direction of the gay character, and I think that this stuff was like, well, he's supposed to be a gay character, but he keep putting them with women, and I think that for him, from what I read and what he even said in interviews, that that's what I get from it.
Yeah.
So I think probably this, and he's probably just like, because probably by mid-season, it's time for like contract renegotiation. And he was probably like, I'm gonna leave. I'm good.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because he's great. So
yeah.
I would have liked to have seen him play out everything.
Well, we know. I guess we know this that Falcon Crest was like kind of like season to season contracts.
Yeah.
With like the newer like characters that would come on. I don't know like what series regular contracts were like that. I know like around the late 90s, probably to now. Usually the contracts are like for 5 or 6 seasons. At least for the CW shows, they were.
I think back then, I think they were per season, unless they were like the core family.
Yeah.
I think it was like per season the same because Nick Toscani, is not in the next season, and then there's like somebody else in a season, and then they go away. Like it's kind of like a per season.
I would imagine,
or
if
even
they
for half season
for 5 seasons back then, that he probably had to pay a penalty for breaking his contract.
Right. I don't know because he left at the end of the season.
I feel like he's the type of guy that if you came to him and said you weren't happy and you wanted to leave, that he was kind of like he would do like an amicable split.
Yeah.
So
I think it was per season though. I really do because I don't know.
Well, we'll never really know. We weren't there.
I think. Yeah, I don't think they did 2 seasons because like remember I think in I forget what season it is. Between like 5 and 6 is when Alexis's contract is up, so she's not in like the first few of the season 6.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert, Dana. I know you. Sorry, I forgot both of you did. But
it's okay.
I think that
I'm good.
but it's a good story though. It's fun. But there's fun stuff going on in it. But yeah, I think it's like per season though because I don't think they signed multi-years for prime time back then.
All right. Well, do you guys have anything else to add on these episodes?
One thing I wanted to say was that the cops that are trying to investigate Blake's bombing are inept and horrific.
Most soap opera cops are.
They have to be.
Do not ask literally any questions other than like what Blake seen and what what Jeff has seen. That's it. They don't ask anything about his transactions. Nothing.
doesn't Blake actually say like I think it's this guy, and then they're like, yeah, I don't know. Like they don't even like investigate him. I don't think it's. I don't think so. That's not that guy.
I was like, you know what? Fine. Even for this rich guy, they're not even willing to investigate. Okay.
Yeah, right. You would think he'd have a cop like under his thumb, like JR did in Dallas, but I guess not.
Yes, literally. But yes, that was like my last note on the last episode. I just was like, ugh, cops.
Cops are terrible. Yeah, soap cops never.
Terrible decade.
They're not good. It takes them about a year to solve things. There would be no storyline. I'm surprised they even have cops in soaps. They might as well just like pretend they don't exist.
Yeah, everybody gets
Serious.
away with everything.
That's what I mean. Like, what was the point of the scene with the detective if they literally were not going to do anything for Blake? I mean, like, just like show, Blake is at least trying to go through the quote unquote correct avenues to like figure out what's going on with this guy, because it's the friggin' Reinhold guy.
Yeah.
It's him.
Yeah. It's so funny.
Shocker.
I guess the only other thing that I would add on these episodes is Jeff is having Nick background checked, and he like gets his family tree, and he's mentioned a brother that went by Giovanni, and he had a different last name, and Blake keeps saying it. He's like, it sounds familiar, but I don't know why. So
yeah, that's true. And then Nick had another flashback too at one point. I can't remember when, but I remember seeing that little hanging person. You see the little.
Oh yeah, because him and Blake have this confrontation about Crystal, because like Blake is like, I don't think she needs psychiatric help. I think that you're just a shitty husband. Essentially, is what he says.
You ain't true.
You're just an inconsiderate.
Good times.
But all right, thank you for joining us for another edition of Dynasty. As always, you can find us on all the socials at Queers and Soaps. And until next time, have a great week. Bye.
Bye.